it's Frank. Today we're going to be talking about seventh chords. This is going to be really an extension, I should say, of what we've already talked about with regard to triads. Recall that a triad is a three-note chord. It's kind of a fundamental building block in Western music. As we get into seventh chords and ultimately add 9, 11, and 13 extensions, we're going to go ahead and be talking about notes that color the basic sounds of the major or minor scale. Those color tones are something that musicians and certainly composers talk about a lot. That's because when you have basic major or minor triads in particular, you have literally the foundational type sound of Western music. Moving beyond those to what we're going to start exploring today gives you colors, so to speak, the same way additional colors are made useful by painters who blend colors together, for instance. It's the same idea. We're just trying to broaden our palette so that we can go ahead and do more with the sounds that we're choosing to use, even though we're starting, in most cases, with the basics. So, working with C major, the same key we started with when we looked at triads the first time, we're going to go ahead and add some sevenths to 3 of the chords in that key. We learned from a few videos back that when you break the major scale, C major scale in particular, into diatonic chords, there are 3 chords that are by default major. That is to say, those chords feature notes that are just built into the scale. As a reminder, those were the C triad, the tonic as we call it, the 4 chord, which F, A, and C in this case, and then the dominant chord. By the way, the F chord is sometimes referred to as subdominant. It leads often to dominant, so sub, of course, means it's heading up that way, so to speak. And that dominant chord is, once again, going to consist of G, B, and D as in dog. If you want a refresher on how I built those triads, you've got a couple of options. You can either review some of the videos I've already posted, or if you check out the PDF that I have linked in the description, you'll see that there is a formula there for root 3, 5, and 7, the new interval we're going to work with. So you can look at that, or you can go back a few videos for an explanation which talks specifically about constructing triads that are either major or minor, or diminished or augmented as well. So once again, coming back to this though, since we have those 3 chords in the key of C, and we know they're diatonic, and meaning they're all major chords, we're just going to add 7s to each of those. What we're going to find is that 2 of them are going to be built exactly the same way, but the third one is going to create a new kind of 7th chord. I shouldn't say it quite as new, it will be different. That's a better way to put it. So beginning with C though, after we move beyond C, E, and G, using the formula we've talked about previously where you skip the next note in the alphabet to get to each of those notes, we had the root, the 3rd, and the 5th. We're going to continue with this pattern of building in thirds when we move to the 7th. That is to say, starting from G, the 5th of this particular triad, we're going to go past A, which would be the 6th note overall in the major scale. As a reminder, C, D, E, F, G, A, to the next note, which is B as in boy. That's the 7th note in this scale. So every major scale has 7 unique notes, and at this point we've gotten to the last of them. From here, recall, we just reached the octave. But if we add this B as in boy note to a C major triad, what we've done is create what's called a C major 7 chord. We call it C major 7 specifically because it includes the basic triad, which is a major triad, C, E, and G, but it also includes an interval now, which is called a major 7th. That major 7th interval is the distance from the C up to the B as in boy note, which is a half step below the octave. So here's another trick is when you're trying to recognize the distance and what kind of 7th it is. For a major 7th, you would go ahead and find the note that's a half step below the octave of whatever note you started on. There's C, there's the octave, half step below is B. This is sometimes referred to as the natural 7th because if you ascended a major scale, you would hit that naturally, meaning it would be diatonic to the key you're in. So that's the 7th of C, and as it turns out, we can take the same approach when we go to the next 2 chords. Now, for convenience sake, I'm actually going to drop down an octave for the F. I played it up here a moment ago, F, A, C. But I'm going to drop down to this F. Remember, octaves don't affect the way we construct the chords in any way. How we voice them, play them I mean, that is a different question. But as far as building them, this doesn't affect that at all, just dropping this octave. So for F, we already know from previous lessons that the next note in this triad is A, and then the 5th, as it's called, is C. So the root is F, the 3rd is A, which I'm playing open this time, C, C is the fifth. Now you may have noticed when we were just playing the C major 7 octave this. If positions and specifically shapes are starting to look more familiar to you in terms of the chords I'm using, then you might have observed that this distance from G to B as in boy, the fifth of C major to the 7th, is the same as this distance from C to E. Physically, the shape is the same. That's because it's a distance of a major third. So it turns out when I do that, when I go from the fifth of a triad up a major third, I'm automatically going to find that major 7th distance. So another way to go ahead and locate it is to start with the fifth and go up a major third. Now in this case, I made sure they were diatonic notes that I used, G to B. I'm going to do the same thing with F. If I'm on C, remember a major third from there we've already established is going to E. We know that from the C triad. So that means from C I skip D as in dog and go right to E. Turns out that's exactly how we make our F major 7 chord. F, A, C, our major triad, skip D as in dog and go right to E. So F, A, C, E. Those are the 4 notes that make up an F major 7 triad. Again, F major, the triad, plus the 7, which in this case is the E. So the next chord in this key that we're going to talk about also has a major triad. That's the G triad. And for that, remember, we have G, B as in boy, D as in dog. So here, this is where things get interesting, and this is what's ultimately going to create a different kind of 7th chord. If we stay diatonic, then what we would do is go from that fifth up a third. Now, for the previous 2 triads that yielded 7th chords, there was this distance here, G to B for the C major 7, and then C to E for the F major 7. If I try to do the same thing here, meaning just go by that shape, this note here is now a sharp note, it's F sharp. This gives me the distance of a major third, but that does not stay diatonic to the key we're in. That's just the way the 5th note of the chord works when we're generating a 7th chord. Instead, I have to go down by a half step. So instead of the interval being a major 7th, like it was when I went from C up to B, or from F up to E, when I get to G, I create a different kind of 7th interval. It's specifically referred to as a minor 7th. That note is F, F natural, of course. Again, in C, no sharps, no flats if we're staying diatonic. Great way to look at things when you're starting out key of C. So that means the 4 notes that make up this chord are G, B as in boy, D as in dog, F natural. That distance, that change, in other words, instead of the sharp note that might be otherwise expected, this minor 7th interval, makes this a G7 or G dominant 7 to get particular chord. All right, and it's not the same as a major 7th chord, specifically because that distance from root to 7th has been changed. Specifically, it's been flatted, we say, by a half step down. So those notes right there then are still diatonic to the key. But again, we just discovered a different kind of 7th chord. Instead of a major 7th chord like C or F, we now have G7 or G dominant 7. More often than not, it's referred to just as the number 7, so G7. And again, that's specifically because of that distance from the root up to here. That's a minor 7th. Now you would think, having named that a minor 7th, this is a minor chord of some kind, but it isn't. We know that because G, B, and D create a major triad. So the 7th on top is just being defined by the fact that there is a distance of a minor 7th, but it's still a major triad below it. All right, so that's our first foray into 7th chords, and we'll be talking a lot more about them and how they interact with triads, of course. Next time, what we'll go ahead and do is look at the minor and probably diminished chord that are yielded when we create 7ths, continue creating 7th chords in the key of C major. Once again, if you want some clarity on this visual kind of way, then just check the link to the PDF in the description. Take care.